Good evening. Fake natties. What to do about them? We'll be back with that in just a moment. Hello, once again. Here we are. Let's see, 29th of July, 2020. Things don't seem to be getting a whole lot better in regards to COVID. I do hope everybody is safe, taking care of themselves without putting themselves into a state of paranoia. We certainly don't need that. I don't think it's going to help the matter as much. Anyways, we are going to tackle the subject of fake natties, or for those who aren't informed, fake naturals, and just how profound the extent that people will go through to pretend that they are a natural athlete or a natural bodybuilder, a natural fitness athlete. And it's pretty disgusting, to be honest with you. But before we get into how to determine, I'm sure you've seen many videos already. People talk about it. I do believe most of the videos, at least all the ones that I've seen, people have missed out on some key points, some key issues that are definitely determining factors, whether someone is using or has been using in either case. I might also say this, to be honest with you, these people get far too much press. The subject needs to be tackled, but the individuals themselves, well, they're scumbags. Really, that's all they are. Whether they're, internet celebrities or YouTube celebrities or, stage athletes, either way, they're really piles of crud, and they don't deserve to get the attention. But unfortunately, they do get a little limelight, and many of them even say, "Well, it doesn't matter. Bad press is any press is good press. They don't even consider it bad press," which is really sad. Anyways, before I go any further, I'm going to make mention of Spotlight Fridays here again. Still haven't got somebody for the show for this Friday. I'm just putting this out there for anybody that happens to have a story or know somebody with a story. It doesn't have to be some glamorous event, but somebody maybe has made some good changes in their lives, through change, through training, through diet. The only prerequisites are they have to be natural, or they've been natural for a while, and they came to some huge epiphany which made them make the transition. Not here to persecute. I'm here to spotlight individuals that have done positive things with their training, and also individuals who are just involved in the sport itself. I want to shed as much light on the subject as I can, bring it out to the forefront, and try and bury the non-natural athletes as much as we can, because they don't deserve to get all that attention. They don't earn it. And it's a very sad state of affairs that we prefer to see freaks instead of just prefer to see beautiful physiques and people that worked hard for years and years. And we should be celebrating that, not the former. Anyways, so if you know of somebody, can be anywhere in the world. It really doesn't matter. All they need is a laptop, a computer. I think we can even do it on their phone. All they have to do is have a good internet connection and be willing to sit down for half an hour to an hour with me over the live stream protocol. And that's it. And just have an open discussion and talk about their triumphs. Basically, that's what we want to do. Okay, so let's get into fake naturals and what they are and just what the impact of it all is. So by definition, fake natural is an individual who takes part in some form of training aids, whether it be anabolic steroids themselves, they could be diuretics, cutting agents, even things like blood doping. It doesn't really matter. The gamut is so broad now. There's all types of enhancements that people use, right down to actual injections. I mean, people creating muscles that aren't even there. Uh, they're fake, using injectables to actually make body parts. Of course, we're fully aware of implants and things like that. But they've gone far, far above just breast implants. In the case of women, we have calf implants, we have glute implants. It's just ridiculous. The whole point, and just a little side note today, the individuals were talking about, for those of you that aren't aware of a product called synthol. Synthol is basically an oil concoction of sorts. I don't know the actual full spectrum of what it is. And it's literally injected in areas into the body to enhance. It's called site enhancement for those areas of the body because they may be lagging or they're just not as developed or they're not, whatever. They're creating something that doesn't even exist. It's not permanent. It's tremendously scary to use. People have run into some just absolutely horrendous situations. And for you, might want to investigate that a little further. You can go through YouTube and search up Synthol Kid. That'll just give you one idea of what's been going on because he's not even the worst. Anyways, my point was in this discussion, the people conducting the actual interview are a well-known organization. They put out many movies, and they're interviewing another well-known bodybuilder. And he's asked the question if things like synthol and insulin have a place in bodybuilding, and he comes out and says that, well, yes, they do have a place, but people are just overdoing it. Who the hell ever says that injecting oils into your body has a place in bodybuilding? What the hell is that? Really, it just disgusts me when I listen to some individuals how stupid they are. When I hear a person like that, I'm sorry, man, but I don't have any respect for you at all. You're just stupid. You're not talking about bodybuilding at all. You're even gone beyond the pharmaceutical point of view. Anyways, let's talk about a little bit more in depth about fake naturals themselves. So, individual who takes some type of thing beyond regular supplements, protein supplements, creatine, vitamins, minerals, all that is completely acceptable. Why is it acceptable? Because they're not drugs. They don't create an artificial stimulant. They don't fall into any of those categories, and they're not illegal. They're not. The things we're talking about were designed for medical situations. That's what all these other agents were. They were designed specifically for medical situations. Growth hormone was designed to regenerate tissue, even regenerate bone cells, stem cells in individuals, young children who weren't growing. That's what it was originally designed for. Insulin, it's an agent used for people who have problems producing insulin. They're in diabetes patients. Athletes have taken this crap and exploited it and used it for their gains and for vanity, for both vanity and for monetary gains. That's what it is. So that's what a fake natural is. But what the problem is we're bombarded in that. I mean, it used to be years ago before YouTube became so prevalent. I mean, all this stuff was there, but it didn't get so much hype and so much press. But now that YouTube is out there, I mean, it's just ridiculous. People that are pretending to be natural athletes for other reasons, for ego, just for monetary gain, become a YouTube star. Of course, the athletes themselves, and they're making these just absurd claims of being natural when the evidence is quite clear when I say evidence, I mean when it comes right down to it, there's no firm test. There are tests, but unfortunately, the testing is far behind the development of the actual products. I have a degree in lab medicine. I know my stuff. Okay, laboratory testing, the tests they do, if they were to do the proper testing, which is available, but it would cost an absolute fortune, which is ridiculous. So we put the how would I want to say this? We put integrity down at the bottom end of the spectrum, and we put just the cost to do these things as the most important factor. And it's the same thing for Olympic athletes, same bullshit, okay? They do not have proper testing because the proper testing would cost a lot more money and they don't want to pay it. Sad part is they shouldn't be having to pay that kind of money to get that. It should be just a standard set of testing protocols. It should be, available to lots of these institutions. What do they want? Do they truly want to clean up sport? Do they truly want to make sure that people aren't pretending and faking and killing themselves in the process? No, they don't. They just pretend to. They catch the odd schmuck that made a boo-boo or screwed up in his protocol, and they catch him or her. They don't catch next to anybody. Every Olympic athlete, I mean, with anybody with any degree of notoriety, they're all using, every one of them. Okay, so be aware of that. Don't let anybody pretend that they're not. So I'm going to talk mainly in regards to fitness athletes and bodybuilders because that's my forte. That's where I've been in for 43 years, and it's where it's probably the most visibly prevalent. It's just as prevalent in a lot of other sports, but because bodybuilders and fitness athletes carry their trophies around with them on a daily basis, it's in your face. You can't deny it, okay? So let's talk about first maybe the ramifications of these people claiming to be natural who aren't. What does it do? It presents this picture that you can attain this look and this level because if I did it, you can do it. When the reality is, depending on what level of development we're talking about, I mean, we're talking about sometimes we have kids, sometimes, mostly kids. You go on YouTube, there's a whole rash of them, like in their late teens to early 20s, 30s. They're selling nothing but, they might as well be selling sex. They're nothing but prostitutes, really. They're not athletes to any degree at all. And anyways, they're selling themselves. But the worst part about that is, let me give you an example. You get a 19-year-old kid out there, male, bodybuilder. He doesn't have a tremendous physique, but he has a physique far above, what any standard 19-year-old might have. Okay, it's enough to go into 90% of them will never even step on the stage, whether it be a physique show, an actual bodybuilding show, a fitness show. There's so many of them out there now. They created these categories for these idiots that don't, only want to take so much drugs, but they don't want to take them all or so much. Really, that's all the categories are for. Anyways, these individuals, so now we have this 19-year-old who has this physique. And so just picture your 16 or 17-year-old son now, and he's looking at that and he's thinking, well, if he can do that, I can do it. He says he's natural, so, why couldn't I do that? So what does it do? He goes to the gym and he starts. And he might put in, he works hard. He works hard and he's naive. He's totally dedicated to the idea of training. He believes you can get there 100%, just as I did when I started. And then it's not happening. He's a year into it, and he sees some gains, but he's looking at this guy, he's looking at himself, thinking like, "What's wrong with me?" And then he's reading more and more on the internet, and everybody's saying, "Well, you also need genetic potential and genetic potential schmenzel. It really doesn't mean shit. Genetic potential really only comes into play in a very minor way. Genetic potential will determine your structure, for example. You can't make your shoulders wider. You can make muscle, you cannot make your shoulder structure wider. You cannot make if your bone structure for your waist is what it is what it is. That's genetics. If your muscle insertions for your bicep are halfway down your forearm, that's good genetics. If they're halfway up your upper arm, that's genetics. You can't change that. But what you can do is add muscle. There's a big difference. So when they're talking about genetics, that's where genetics come into play. And yes, some people will put on muscle quicker than others. But in most regards, that's such a minor figure because development of muscle really takes a certain amount of cognitive effort. What I mean is just going through the motions for next to everybody will never grow that much muscle. The cognitive element comes into play. And when you're just beginning, you don't even have that cognitive element. Okay. So you get this kid and he's looking at this boy and he's going, like, what's wrong with me? And so what happens? He does one of two things. He delves a little deeper and he decides that he finds out the truth. And he decides he's going to go. Now, when I say the truth, I don't mean reality. I just mean he finds out what this lad is actually doing. So he makes a choice. He either looks at it and goes, well, I'm not willing to do that. And he just stops training. So we lose somebody potentially for the sport or for whatever. And we lose, this individual loses that possibility of, training themselves into a nice physique and a healthy lifestyle. Or he jumps on the bandwagon and he becomes part of it and he puts himself in jeopardy. Either one of those are a terrible outcome. So these people are out there and they're saying, well, it's up to each individual, what they do. It's their body. They get to do what they want to do. And I say that's bullshit because you are impacting other individuals. You're impacting people of all ages, both sexes, and you're having a major impact on them that could actually affect their lives and the lives of people around them. And it's just sickening to listen to individuals associated with the sport. Many of them have major YouTube channels, and they have a huge audience. They're making piles of money for spreading this cancer bullshit. Is what they're doing. Okay, you don't want to be supporting that. Okay, they know what's going on. They even have open shows discussing drug protocols. That's how disgusting it is right now. So there's a major impact that goes far beyond the actual individual themselves. Then let's talk about the individual that does that. Many of them, especially, I'm going to talk for a small period here, but just the young group, if they've never spent any time, and when I mean any time, I don't mean a few weeks or a few months here. Lord knows, and I know after 40 some years, how much time it takes to develop muscle. But it's always worth it. It is always worth it. Okay, so if you're sitting there and you want to start into this game, like decide to make that effort, and you're gonna go all the way. Okay, but because if you don't, you're gonna end up starting and then stopping. You may even start again and then stop. And then you may make that terrible decision to get on that bandwagon. And if you talk to people that have been using shit for years, you will not find one. They talk about, there's some very well-grounded people in bodybuilding and that who, done really well. Well, you know what? There are people, they're doctors, they're lawyers. Doesn't mean they have it all going on up here. You know that many doctors are actually addicts? Just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you're second to God in intelligence. Not at all. It doesn't mean that. So my point being that make a choice. Make a choice when, to this young group of people. Don't be influenced by the other training people around you, or even gym owners. I've seen it, and I've been approached by many people over my career. Saying, why don't you take some stuff, or we can get you a good deal. Sorry, man, I'm not interested. I've already gone through the learning process. I went through the learning process, went through the naive periods, and you know what? I get it. People want to believe in something. They want to believe about what they can attain. It's the reason why these get slim drinks and get slim pills and you name it. You know, these infomercials on everything under the sun sell. It's because people want it so bad, they're vulnerable, and these scumbags take advantage of people like that. That's what they are. They're all scum of the earth. Okay? So, anyways, you have a choice, and then, like I said, then you have, you know, the older group of people. They're just as vulnerable. Why? Because many of them, maybe they're at a point in their life where, you know, they're not feeling desirable anymore, or maybe they've gone through divorces. You know, I see lots of, you know, middle-aged women and men, or even above middle age, and they're users. I'm thinking, are you kidding? Are you that insecure at that stage of your life that you decide you have to do that? You don't have to do that. Anyways, so that's the impact it's having on people. It's getting others involved. It's ruining other people's dreams. And the bottom line is, you can grow a tremendous physique, and there may be some type of genetic cap. Okay, there's no denying that. But the thing that people don't talk about is that nobody will ever reach that genetic cap naturally. Why? Because the genetic cap is tied into your psychological development in regard, and we both know, everybody's always heard this term that human beings use only a very small, some people say as much as only 5% of their brain capacity. And if you've heard any of my live streams before, you know that I put the psychological or the cerebral element of training at the top of the priority list. It's the most important thing. That, nutrition, then training. That's the order of things. So if you cannot reach your potential mentally, you never reach your potential physically. That only makes sense. Think about that. So what does that tell you? That tells you that you can train your whole life and continue to improve. I know it. I've been doing it. I'm not some special individual. I'm just a motivated, structured, and dedicated individual. And that's what you have to become. But I don't mean, you know, dedicated and structured in a way that's not fun. You make this part of your lifestyle. This is what you do. You know, this is what you like to do. And it doesn't mean it's the only thing you can do. That's the other thing. People become, because they go down the drug route, they become unbalanced mentally. They have a very unstructured lifestyle other than when they eat and when they train. The rest of the world is shit for most of them. They're just lost because it creates an imbalance. It creates, if they have any type of insecurities at all, it'll drive them up. Okay? So those are the implications of being not, you know, being a fake natty. Okay? How to determine? You know, the bad part about this is there's no 100% guarantee that I can look at somebody and tell them or say that person is using, this person is not, da 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 da. But there are certain things that do stand out. I'm going to reiterate some of the obvious ones that other people mentioned, and then I'm going to focus in on what I think is the key element that most people don't even think of. Okay, you know, they talk about, well, you know, lots of people, you notice they have like this spacing in their teeth. You know, that's usually a sign that they're using GH, you know, because GH tends to make, you know, actual, you know, create bone growth. Or you'll see, you know, an extension on their forearm, or many people actually have an elbow bone that's actually distended or extended beyond the regular, what we consider normal. So it looks like a huge nodule sticking out. Then they'll talk about the look of the muscle. They talk about these capped delts. I don't know about so much with the capped delts. I do agree that there's only so much of delt development that would be natural, and in most of the heavy users in particular, the delts, they don't even look, they don't look human. They just don't look human. Okay. The other thing too is the look of the muscle. The muscle has it can have two looks and look quite foreign. One is it has a very puffy look, and obviously, usually quite significant in size. And the other thing is it has a um, a graininess, a hardness to it that is very hard to attain as a natural athlete. I'm not saying you can't get damn close, because you can, but you take somebody in razor hard condition as a natural athlete, and you take somebody in razor hard condition who's not a natural athlete, and they will have a different look. It won't just be size. I guarantee you. I've seen it for years. Okay, this is a fact. Okay, let's talk about women in particular. There's such obvious signs in women. I'm not even talking about the real obvious ones where let's face it, they look like men. They're not women anymore. They've totally ruined themselves. Some of them even start to look like they've developing an Adam's apple. They have a clitoral enlargement. These are actualities. They have facial hair. They look like your 80-year-old grandmother. Some. They have a hardness to their face that is brought on because testosterone is not natural in those type of levels in a woman. And they certainly aren't made to have 18-inch arms or 19-inch arms. That's the shit you're seeing nowadays. It's ridiculous. They look like men. So in many ways, it's actually easier to determine with females, but not all of them, because some females, they'll use some drugs that aren't so much size oriented, but they're definitely get into diuretics. Even bikini athletes, they're into diuretics and cutting agents. They don't do a lot of these people just don't do a whole lot of hard training. They rely on drugs to do all the work for them. Okay. So those are some of the key things. But the main thing, this is the main thing, why I don't see why it's not even discussed. Well, there's two main things, actually. You ever noticed how, some of these movie stars that have been out, I laugh all the time because, when it comes to the men and women, you're going crazy over these certain guys. And I'm thinking, every one of these guys have been using shit to get where they are. And I'm not just talking about The Rock, and I'm not talking about Sylvester Stallone. These people are known. It's known that they take stuff. That was their choosing. We're talking about all the other, it's all of a sudden, well, look, they got a six pack, or they got what? Oh yeah, well, he was on some real, tremendous training regime there for the last 5 months there with a personal trainer. Bullshit. Okay, because if you can even look at them, that's the other telling factor. Look at them a few months later sometimes, and they look worse than they looked before. Not to mention all the enhancements they actually do on screen. And that goes for some of the women as well. Okay, no difference. So that transition, that back and forth. Oh, 1 minute he's looking like this, and 1 minute he's looking like that, or they're looking like this. Unless you're a competitive bodybuilder, you don't normally have those fluctuations like that. Yes, you can have an off season and on season as a non-competitive bodybuilder as well. But I'm sorry that those transitions do not happen that rapidly with individuals like that. Okay, that's one of the key factors. But the biggest, and I do mean the most important factor, muscle takes time to build. That's one thing any doctor, any sports psychologist will tell you. Muscle takes time to build. So if I see an 18-year-old kid and he's got 19-inch arms and he's claiming to be natural, I want to kick his ass all the way down the sidewalk because he's full of shit. Okay? And I don't even care if they're even smooth 18-inch arms. It doesn't happen. Okay? For two reasons. As I mentioned, muscle takes time to develop. Okay? It takes time to develop. Also, it takes some degree of persistent, continuous training and dedication. Most of these, you can see them on YouTube. 15, 16-year-old kid as old as 13 and 14, and they're already on shit. They're not dedicated athletes. They just saw some kids getting attention on YouTube. They wanted some of that. And so it's available everywhere. People say, well, how do they get a hold of it? It's easier to get a hold of than weed. Easier. It's disgusting. Okay? So that's the big factor. Look at the age of somebody. I'm sorry, man, but if you've only been training 4 years or 5 years and you have this, national caliber physique, you aren't natural. You never were. That's a reality. And people need to know about that. So the message goes out to all you fake naturals out there. Stop hogging the limelight from people that actually earn the right. There are people out there that actually do it natural, spend their life doing it natural. And just to summarize here as well, people say, well, they talk about reaching their genetic cap. I went into this a little earlier in the stream, and I said, that people don't, they don't know, they don't research that genetic potential because they don't harness their full cognitive abilities. And but on the other argument too, as well, is that people don't realize. They say, "Well, how come we don't see more, good naturals with good physiques?" It's because it takes time. And 90% or more, I'm just pulling out numbers here, but the huge majority of individuals are not dedicating their lives to training. And I don't mean like that they dedicate their whole life to training, but they're not willing to make that a lifetime investment and stick with it the whole time and stay natural. They jump off at some point, and they all say, well, I wasn't making any more gains, or, I reached my potential, which are two pieces of baloney. You hit some plateaus. It's time to start thinking what it takes, go to the next level. You didn't reach your genetic cap because nobody ever does. Okay. The problem is that why we can't sit there as our argument as being naturals is because we don't have enough people that think like us that want to stick it through 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. Because everybody wanted it yesterday. And that's the problem. You're willing to put in the time. I guarantee you, we would see more astounding physiques at the natural level, and they would progressively get better. And totally discard the whole idea, which will be another live stream in itself, talking about when does it stop being possible to even make gains due to age or whatever. That's a whole other video on its own. But you will continue to make progress because even regardless of your level of testosterone production, there's so much more that can create a better physique as you move along and a bigger physique. You don't need maximum testosterone production to create a maximum production physique. Never the two ever should be intertwined together in thought. Okay? Anyways, I'm going to wrap this up. I hope that brought to light a couple of those main factors that I brought up in regards to age and body transition over periods of time as indicators of whether somebody's using or not, because those are the important ones. Okay, it's not the guessing at it that goes on. But I'm just going to go once more. I'm going to say, to anybody out there, whether it be yourself or whether you know somebody else, you want, some time, bring some light to, the wonderful work that you've done with yourself, or the major change that's happened in your life because of being natural and making some dietary changes and making some, getting active and hitting the gym. I want to hear about it. The rest of the world wants to hear about it. They want hope. They want inspiration. This is all about, that show is all about you. I do these shows because this is part of my career, but I do that show in particular to give everybody a chance to step into the limelight. Get yourself some exposure, and it will be exposure over time. Anyways, that's all I'm going to say for tonight. I am planning to have another guest on Friday. If it doesn't come back, it doesn't happen that way, that's okay. I will have a backup plan, and we'll get into another discussion. We're going to leave the discussions on the negative aspects of the sport for a while. Because to be honest with you, when I finished my show on Monday, I felt a little down. I really did, because I don't like focusing in on the negative stuff. And it's not negative, but it's the black side of the sport that I don't like. and I want to focus in on the positive stuff. So for the next few weeks, other than, when I see some garbage out there, I'll mention that there's not going to be whole shows dedicated to, the negative aspect of things. Unless somebody writes in and they want to talk about something specifically, we're going to focus in on other positive portions. We're also going to maybe start some discussions on exercises and types of routines and things like that. So this is Perry for Bull Fierce Training and Bull Fierce Media signing off, and I hope that everybody stays safe and that they, continue to train hard. Take care of yourselves and be positive. Remember, train Bull Fierce. God bless you.